For 3,000 years, the galaxy believed humanity was dead. It was written in their history archives. It was taught in their military schools. It was spoken in quiet voices as a warning to young officers. Earth had burned. The Dominion Alliance remembered that day clearly. Their war fleets had surrounded the blue planet. Massive ships blocked the sun. Plasma fire rained from the sky. Oceans turned to steam. Cities melted into glowing rivers of metal. Humans fought back with everything they had. Their ships were weaker. Their numbers were small. But they did not surrender. They fought until the very last signal from Earth went silent. After that, the Dominion searched the solar system for survivors. They found broken stations, destroyed satellites, dead colonies, no humans. Over time, the memory of humanity became a legend, a dangerous species that rose too fast, an emotional race that could not be controlled, a mistake that had been corrected. 3,000 years passed. The Dominion grew into the strongest power in the galaxy. They ruled thousands of systems. Their fleets controlled trade routes. Their banners flew over distant stars. Peace under their rule. But on the outer edge of Dominion space, in a cold and forgotten region near a dying red star, something moved. An ancient object drifted in darkness. It looked like dead metal, broken, silent. Then a faint blue light flickered across its surface. Deep inside the structure, systems began to wake. Power flowed through frozen circuits. Engines that had been silent for millennia hummed softly. In a chamber filled with glass pods, liquid drained away from one capsule. Inside it, a human opened his eyes. Commander Elias Ward took his first breath in 3,000 years. His lungs burned, his muscles trembled, but his mind was clear. A calm female voice echoed through the chamber. Stasis complete. Time elapsed. 3,000 years. Earth status destroyed. Protocol vengeance activated. Elias closed his eyes for a moment. Earth was still gone. He had known this before entering stasis. He had seen the sky burn. He had watched continents crack apart. He had heard the final screams over military channels, but hearing it confirmed after 3,000 years made the pain feel new again. Around him, hundreds of other pods opened. Men and women stepped out slowly. Soldiers, scientists, engineers, leaders. They did not cry. They did not shout. They simply stood in silence. The last survivors of Earth. The ship they stood in was called Exodus Prime. It was not alone. Beyond the dying red star, hidden in deep space, thousands of human vessels waited in darkness. Some were as large as cities. Some were small and sharp like blades. All of them had slept. All of them were waking now. In the command center of Exodus Prime, holographic displays lit up the dark room. Maps of the galaxy appeared. Dominion territory covered most of it. Elias walked to the center platform. His voice was steady. Status report. An officer answered. Fleet operational at 98%. Weapon systems upgraded during autonomous cycles. AI networks stable. No external detection. 3,000 years ago, humans had escaped with damaged ships and limited supplies, but they did not waste their exile. During their long journey beyond known space, their machines had continued to build. Self-repair systems improved hulls. Artificial intelligence redesigned weapons. Quantum drives evolved far beyond old technology. Humans had entered the dark as refugees. They had grown into something far more dangerous. On a distant Dominion outpost near the border region, a young alien officer named Kale monitored deep space scanners. His shift had been quiet, too quiet. Suddenly, his screen flickered. A strange energy spike appeared near the red star system. He frowned. The signal was ancient in pattern, old technology, not Dominion. He adjusted the scanner resolution. The reading multiplied. One object became 10. 10 became hundreds, then thousands. Kale felt his heart race. Ships. A fleet. But they were not using hyperspace lanes. They were simply appearing as if they had always been there but invisible. He quickly sent a report to his commander. Before he could finish, every communication channel in the outpost went dark. No explosion. No warning. Just silence. Outside the station windows, space bent strangely. Dark shapes moved between the stars. Smooth. Massive. Silent. Symbols glowed faint blue on their hulls. A circle. A planet. Earth. Back on Exodus Prime, Elias watched as reports came in from forward scouts. Outer Dominion listening post disabled. Communication grid disrupted. No civilian casualties. Everything was precise, controlled. Humans were not here for chaos. They were here for purpose. Elias looked at the image of Earth displayed before him, a recorded memory of blue oceans and white clouds. 3,000 years, he said quietly. We waited long enough. In the Dominion capital, news of the border blackout began to spread. High commanders gathered in a massive chamber of silver walls and glowing data screens. One officer stepped forward, his voice uncertain. Unknown fleet detected in outer region. Technology signature does not match any known species. Origin? The High Chancellor demanded. The officer hesitated. There is a symbol on their ships. Our archives show it once before. An ancient hologram was projected into the center of the chamber. An image from 3,000 years ago. A blue planet, Earth. The room fell silent. That species is extinct, one general whispered. Before anyone could respond, every screen in the chamber changed. A single message appeared across all Dominion networks. Clear, simple, human language translated instantly by universal systems. We are not extinct. On Exodus Prime, Elias stood tall as fleets began moving into formation. Thousands of ships aligned with perfect coordination. The stars ahead belonged to the Dominion, the same Dominion that had once burned their home. A young officer approached Elias. Commander, final confirmation requested. Do we proceed? Elias looked once more at the image of Earth. Then he gave the order. Humanity returns. Across the darkness of space, engines ignited. And for the first time in 3,000 years, the galaxy felt fear. Because the species they thought they had erased had come back. The message spread across the Dominion faster than light. We are not extinct. Those 4 words shook an empire that had ruled without fear for thousands of years. In the Dominion capital, panic was hidden behind calm faces. Leaders did not show fear. Generals did not admit doubt. But inside the Great War Chamber, tension was rising. 3,000 years ago, they believed they had finished the human problem. Now the problem had returned. High Chancellor Verax stood before a massive holographic map of the galaxy. Red lights marked Dominion systems. At the outer edge, several lights had just gone dark. Explain, Verax demanded. A military analyst stepped forward. Outer listening post Delta 7 is offline. Patrol Fleet Orion is not responding. Surveillance drones are gone. No debris detected. No debris. Verax narrowed his eyes. Yes, Chancellor. It is as if they were erased. The word erased felt wrong in the room. The Dominion was supposed to erase others, not the opposite. Meanwhile, in deep space near the Red Star, the human fleet moved like a silent storm. Thousands of ships formed precise patterns. Some were massive carriers filled with advanced strike crafts. Others were thin and sharp, designed for speed and precision. Exodus Prime remained at the center. Commander Elias Ward stood on the command platform, watching battle simulations flow before him. 3,000 years of preparation had not been wasted. Humans had studied war differently during exile. They had removed pride from strategy. They had removed anger from decision-making. They had turned revenge into mathematics. A tactical officer spoke calmly. Dominion Response Fleet detected 500 warships exiting hyperspace in Sector 12. Elias nodded. Let them see us. On the edge of Sector 12, Dominion battleships appeared in flashes of blue light. Their hulls were heavy and armored. Their weapons were powerful enough to crack moons. Admiral Korth of the Dominion fleet looked at his display with disbelief. Human ships floated ahead, not hiding, not retreating, waiting. They are fewer than expected, one Dominion officer said. Korth straightened. Then we crushed them quickly. Fire on my command. Dominion cannons charged. Massive beams of energy shot across space. But something strange happened. The beams slowed. Space itself twisted around the human ships. The energy bent away, curving harmlessly into empty darkness. What is happening? Korth shouted. Before anyone answered, the human fleet moved. They did not rush forward wildly. They shifted positions with perfect coordination. Then a low pulse spread from several human vessels. It was not bright. It was not loud, but it changed everything. Dominion warships began to shake. Metal hulls compressed inward as if invisible hands were squeezing them. Gravity. Humans had mastered gravity as a weapon. One Dominion cruiser folded in half silently. Another stretched thin, then snapped apart. Admiral Korth stared in horror. Retreat, he ordered. But hyperspace drives would not activate. Human interference fields blocked escape routes. Within minutes, the battlefield was filled with floating debris. No explosions, no dramatic fire, just silent destruction. Only one damaged Dominion ship managed to send a distress signal before it was crushed. "They control space itself," the message said. Then it ended. Back in the Dominion capital, the war chamber fell silent as the fleet icons disappeared one by one. 500 warships. Gone. Chancellor Varex felt something unfamiliar. Fear. "These are not the same humans," a general whispered. "No," Varys replied slowly. "They are not. On Exodus Prime, human officers reviewed battle results. 0 human casualties," one reported. "Enemy fleet neutralized in 4 minutes and 32 seconds. Elias remained calm, recovered data fragments from debris, analyzed their current military upgrades, prepare next movement. A younger officer hesitated before speaking. "Commander, why not destroy their capital now? We have the power." Elias looked at him carefully. "Because fear spreads faster than destruction." He pointed at the galactic map. "Every system is watching. Every species remembers the burning of Earth as a distant story. We will remind them." Human fleets split into multiple divisions. Some moved toward military shipyards. Others targeted communication hubs. They struck carefully. They avoided civilian worlds. They disabled weapons factories. Every attack was fast and precise. Within days, dozens of Dominion systems went dark. The empire that once believed itself untouchable was suddenly blind in many regions. Across the galaxy, smaller alien civilizations watched in silence. Some had suffered under Dominion rule. Some had feared human aggression long ago. Now they whispered the same question. Are humans here to conquer or to judge? In a hidden chamber within the Dominion capital, ancient archives were reopened. Old recordings from the war against Earth played again. Images of human soldiers fighting even as cities burned. Messages of human captains refusing surrender. One final human transmission from 3,000 years ago echoed in the chamber. "We will survive." The Dominion officers had laughed at that message long ago. They were not laughing now. Back in deep space, Elias received a classified report from human intelligence. Dominion morale decreasing, border systems preparing defensive lines, political divisions detected among their leaders. Elias nodded slowly. Good. 3,000 years ago, humans had fought with desperation. Now they fought with patience. This was not chaos. This was correction. A senior scientist approached Elias with new data. "Commander, our long-range scans detect something unusual near the Dominion core systems. Energy readings are unstable." "Weapon?" Elias asked. "Possibly. Or something older." Elias stared at the projection. 3,000 years ago, humans had underestimated the Dominion. He would not make that mistake again. "Prepare reconnaissance drones," he ordered. "We advance carefully." As human fleets moved deeper into Dominion territory, one final message was sent across all major networks. Not loud, not dramatic, just simple. "You burned our home." The words carried weight, because they were not shouted in anger. They were spoken with certainty, and certainty was far more dangerous. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Dominion understood something clearly. Humanity had not returned in rage. Humanity had returned in control, and control was unstoppable. The first shock wave of war had passed, but something larger was coming, something that would decide the fate of the galaxy. And this time, humans were ready for anything. The Dominion was no longer confident. Across their vast empire, fear moved faster than fleets. Military systems were failing one by one. Shipyards had gone silent. Defense grids collapsed without warning. Communication towers were disabled with perfect precision. Humans were not rushing. They were advancing slowly, carefully, like hunters. In the Dominion capital, Chancellor Varex stood before a hidden chamber deep beneath the city. Only a few leaders even knew it existed. Ancient walls surrounded a massive circular device in the center of the room, the obsidian core. 3,000 years ago, during the war with Earth, the Dominion had used this weapon only once. It was not just a bomb, it was a starbreaker. The core could destabilize an entire solar system. It had been the final strike that ensured Earth would never recover. Or so they believed. A Dominion scientist stepped forward nervously. "Chancellor, the obsidian core is unstable. It has not been activated in millennia. Can it destroy the human fleet?" Varex asked. If they gather in one system, yes, but the energy release would damage surrounding territories. Varix did not hesitate. Prepare it. Above the capital, Dominion fleets gathered in massive formations. Thousands of warships surrounded the core worlds. They would not allow humans to reach the heart of the Empire. Meanwhile, far from the capital, human fleets paused near a destroyed Dominion shipyard. Commander Elias Ward stood in the observation chamber of Exodus Prime. Wreckage floated in silence. He did not smile. He did not smile. He did not celebrate. A tactical officer approached. Commander, long-range sensors detect extreme energy buildup in Dominion's central system. Elias looked at the data. The readings were familiar. Very familiar. Magnify projection, he ordered. A hologram formed in the air. Energy waves pulsed outward from the Dominion capital region. Elias felt a cold memory rise in his mind. He remembered the sky of Earth splitting apart. He remembered the sky of Earth splitting apart. He remembered oceans lifting into space. He remembered the final explosion that ended everything. They kept it, he said quietly. The officer frowned. Commander? They kept the weapon that destroyed Earth. Silence filled the command room. For 3,000 years, humans had searched for records of the final strike. They knew Earth had not simply been bombarded. It had been erased with something far more powerful. Now they had found it. Elias turned to his senior staff. They are preparing to use it again. One officer spoke carefully. If they fire it at us, we will lose thousands of ships. Elias nodded. Yes. Another officer added. We could strike first. Destroy their capital before they activate it. Elias shook his head. No. That weapon must not be detonated. Not anywhere. He stared at the projection again. 3,000 years ago, humans were unprepared for the obsidian core. Now they were not. Prepare infiltration units, Elias ordered. We are going to take it. In the Dominion capital, energy levels inside the obsidian core continued rising. Technicians worked quickly. Security forces guarded every entrance. General Korth, one of the few survivors from the earlier battle, stood beside Chancellor Varix. They are moving closer, Korth reported. Human fleets are advancing toward Central Territory. Varix nodded slowly. Good. Let them gather. He looked at the core with cold confidence. They survived our first mistake. They will not survive the second. But unknown to them, something invisible had already entered their system. Human infiltration ships were unlike warships. They were small, almost undetectable. Using advanced gravity masking, they slipped past patrol routes and defensive scanners. Inside one such vessel stood Captain Mira Solis. She was young compared to Elias, but her eyes held the same calm focus. Her team consisted of soldiers enhanced with neural implants and advanced armor. Not machines, still human. Their mission was simple. Enter the Dominion capital, disable the obsidian core, survive. Mira looked at the glowing planet ahead. 3,000 years ago, this same empire had watched Earth burn from orbit. Now humans were at their doorstep. Stealth field holding, her pilot reported. Good, Miro replied. Prepare for ground insertion. The infiltration craft entered the planet's upper atmosphere, hidden within debris from a previous battle. Dominion scanners were overwhelmed with military traffic. No one noticed one small shadow descending. Back on Exodus Prime, Elias watched multiple tactical windows. Human fleets continued their advance but maintained distance from the capital system. He was giving the Dominion exactly what they wanted, a target. But the real move was happening elsewhere. An intelligence officer approached him. Commander, infiltration team has entered atmosphere successfully. Elias nodded. Now we wait. Inside the Dominion capital, alarms suddenly flashed. Not outside, inside. Deep below the city, security forces rushed toward the obsidian core chamber. A breach had been detected. Captain Mira and her team moved through metallic corridors with precision. Their weapons were silent pulse rifles designed for close combat. Dominion guards engaged them quickly. Energy blasts filled the hallway. 2 human soldiers fell. Mira did not hesitate. Advance, she ordered. They pushed forward. Every step closer to the core was a step closer to justice. In the central chamber, Dominion scientists screamed as control panels sparked and systems flickered. Mira reached the massive device. It pulsed with unstable power. It was larger than she expected. The same weapon that ended Earth. She placed a device on the control structure. Upload virus, she commanded. Human AI code entered the obsidian core system. Not to explode it, to shut it down permanently. Above the planet, Dominion fleets detected something strange. Energy levels inside the core began to drop. Chancellor Varix stared at the readings. "What is happening?" he demanded. A technician trembled. "We are losing control. External override detected." Impossible. But it was not impossible, because humans had spent 3,000 years preparing for this moment. Inside the chamber, Dominion reinforcements flooded in. Mira's team fought fiercely. One by one, her soldiers fell protecting the upload process. Finally, the device finished its work. The obsidian core went dark. The weapon that destroyed Earth was dead. Mira looked around at her fallen team. She activated her communicator. "Commander, the weapon is disabled." Back on Exodus Prime, Elias closed his eyes briefly. "Understood. Extraction?" There was silence. Then Mira answered calmly. "Negative. We will hold position." Dominion forces surrounded the chamber. Mira stood tall. Her mission was complete. The core would never fire again. Above the planet, Dominion leaders realized the truth. Humans had reached the heart of their empire, and they had removed their greatest weapon. Without the obsidian core, the Dominion was no longer unstoppable. They were vulnerable. For the first time in 3,000 years, the balance of power had shifted completely. Elias opened his eyes and gave a new order. "Advance on the capital." Human fleets began moving forward, slow, unstoppable, because now there was nothing left that could stop them. And the Dominion finally understood something terrifying. Humanity did not return blindly. Humanity returned prepared, and this war was only halfway finished. The obsidian core was gone. The weapon that once erased Earth was nothing more than cold metal buried under the Dominion capital. For the first time in 3,000 years, the Dominion had no ultimate weapon, only fear. Across their empire, panic spread quietly. Military channels filled with urgent messages. Governors demanded protection. Outer colonies began preparing evacuation plans. The myth of Dominion invincibility had shattered. In the capital war chamber, Chancellor Varix stood before a wall of fading tactical displays. Red markers showed human fleets pushing deeper into core territory. "They are advancing without pause," a general said. "They avoid civilian zones," another added. "Only military sites are targeted." Varix's eyes narrowed. "They are not here to slaughter," he said slowly. "They are here to dismantle." That realization was worse than rage. If humans wanted simple revenge, the Dominion could understand that. Anger was predictable, but this was controlled, measured, strategic. Meanwhile, human fleets surrounded 3 major Dominion shipyards. Massive orbital factories floated above industrial worlds, once symbols of Dominion strength. Now they were silent. Commander Elias Ward watched the operation unfold from Exodus Prime. "Status?" he asked calmly. "Shipyard 1 disabled," an officer replied. "Production lines destroyed. Shipyard 2 surrendering. Workers requesting protection. Shipyard 3 attempting counterattack." Elias nodded. "Disabled defenses. Accept surrender. Protect civilians." 3,000 years ago, Earth had begged for mercy. None was given. Humans would not repeat that mistake. They were not becoming monsters. They were correcting history. On the surface of one industrial world, Dominion workers looked up at the sky as human ships blocked the stars. No bombardment came. No fire rained down. Instead, a broadcast filled the air. "We do not seek your extinction. Remain calm. Military facilities will be dismantled." The workers stared at each other in disbelief. This was not how the Dominion fought. This was not how conquerors behaved. Back in the capital, Dominion intelligence delivered disturbing news. "Multiple subject species are refusing to support our war effort," an officer reported. "Several outer systems are declaring neutrality." Varix slammed his hand on the table. "Traitors. They fear humanity," the officer said quietly, "and they no longer fear us." That was the true damn it. The Dominion ruled through power and reputation. Humans were destroying both. Far from the capital, a Dominion admiral named Serac prepared a final stand. He commanded the largest remaining fleet, stationed near the inner defense ring. Thousands of warships formed a defensive wall around the capital system. Serac knew retreat was no longer possible. If they lost here, the empire would fall. He addressed his crews through fleet-wide transmission. "Humans are strong, but they are few. They have traveled for 3,000 years. They must be tired." He paused. "We fight not for conquest. We fight for survival." In the darkness beyond the defense ring, human fleets gathered silently. Elias stood beside his senior officers. "This will be their largest resistance," one officer said. "Yes," Elias replied. "And it will be their last." Human ships began moving forward. No dramatic charge, no wild formations, just smooth, perfect coordination. Dominion cannons opened fire first. Thousands of beams crossed space. Human ships shifted in precise patterns, bending gravity fields to redirect energy blasts. Then the humans answered. Instead of massive destructive pulses, they deployed disruption waves. Dominion targeting systems failed. Navigation systems glitched. Communication channels filled with static. The Dominion fleet began losing coordination. Admiral Serac shouted orders trying to regain control. Maintain formation. Focus fire on their command ships. But human command ships were impossible to track. They moved between folds in space, appearing and vanishing like ghosts. Then came the second human strike. Small, fast attack crafts launched from larger carriers. They did not aim for hull destruction. They targeted engines, power cores, weapon mounts. Dominion ships lost mobility one by one. They were not exploding. They were being neutralized. Serac watched in horror as his once mighty fleet became a drifting graveyard of disabled vessels. Human ships surrounded them completely. A calm human transmission entered his command channel. "Surrender. Your crews will be spared." Serac's hands trembled. 3,000 years ago, Dominion commanders had offered Earth surrender terms. None were sincere. Now the roles were reversed. He looked at the faces of his officers. Fear, doubt, exhaustion. Slowly, he lowered his head. "Stand down," he ordered. Across the battlefield, Dominion ships powered down weapons. The largest defense fleet in the Empire had fallen without being destroyed. Back in the capital, silence filled the war chamber. "They surrendered," an aide whispered. Chancellor Verax felt something inside him collapse. The Empire was crumbling from within, not through fire, through humiliation. On Exodus Prime, Elias received confirmation. Inner defense fleet neutralized. Casualties minimal. He allowed himself one slow breath, open channel to the Dominion capital. Moments later, his image appeared in the war chamber of the Dominion leaders. He stood tall, calm, wearing simple, dark uniform, not decorated, not proud, just steady. Verax stared at him. "You could have destroyed us," the Chancellor said. "Yes," Elias answered. "Why haven't you?" Elias's voice was firm. "Because we are not here to become what you were." The chamber was silent. "You burned our home," Elias continued. "You believed fear would keep you safe. It did, for 3,000 years." He stepped closer to the projection. But fear does not last forever. Outside the capital, human fleets now surrounded the system completely, not attacking, waiting for a decision, surrender, or extinction. Across the galaxy, other civilizations watched the broadcast. They saw something new: power without cruelty, strength without chaos. The Dominion Empire, once unshakable, was trembling, and at its gates stood the species it tried to erase. Humanity, united, prepared, and fully in control. The final choice now belonged to the Dominion. But deep down, everyone already knew. The age of the Dominion was ending, and the age of humanity had begun again. The Dominion capital had never known silence like this. No alarms, no battle sounds, no explosions, only the quiet hum of human ships surrounding the system, thousands of them, waiting. Inside the war chamber, Chancellor Verax stood alone for a long moment after the transmission ended. His generals whispered among themselves. Some demanded one last strike. Others spoke of surrender. For centuries, the Dominion had ruled through fear. Now fear ruled them. A senior advisor stepped forward carefully. "Chancellor, if we continue this war, we will lose everything." Verax did not answer. Another general spoke with anger. "We still have planetary defense cannons. We can take many of their ships with us." "And then what?" the advisor replied. "They destroy the planet. Our species ends." That word hung heavy in the air. Ends. 3,000 years ago, that was the fate they chose for humanity, or so they thought. Meanwhile, on Exodus Prime, Commander Elias watched Dominion internal communications being analyzed by human intelligence systems. "They are divided," an officer reported. "Military factions want to fight. Civil leaders want surrender." Elias nodded slowly. "This is their true weakness," he said. "Not their weapons, not their fleets. Pride." He turned toward the main display where Earth appeared once more. A reconstructed image built from preserved memory files. Green forests, blue oceans, white clouds, all gone, but not forgotten. A young officer stepped closer to him. "Commander, if they surrender, what happens next?" Elias looked at the image of Earth. Then the galaxy changes. Back on the Dominion capital world, protests began spreading through major cities. Citizens demanded peace. Workers refused to support military commands. Broadcast stations replayed the human message again and again. "We are not here to become what you were." The word struck deep. For the first time, many Dominion citizens questioned their history. They had been told humans were dangerous, unstable, a threat to galactic order. But the fleet outside their world was not burning cities. It was waiting. High Chancellor Verex walked alone into a private archive chamber. Ancient recordings from the war against Earth played before him. He saw Dominion ships firing on the blue planet. He heard human distress signals. He watched the Obsidian Core unleash its final pulse. At that time, he had believed it was necessary. Now, he was not sure. A guard entered quietly. "Chancellor, human fleets are repositioning closer. No weapons charged. They are holding formation." Verex closed his eyes. "They are giving us time," he whispered. "Time for what?" the guard asked. "To decide if we deserve to exist." Hours later, Dominion leadership gathered for the final vote. The chamber was tense. Some argued that surrender would mean humiliation. Others argued that extinction was worse. Finally, Verex raised his hand. "We underestimated humanity once. That mistake cost them their world." He paused. "We will not make another mistake." He looked directly into the central camera. "Open a channel." Across space, a transmission reached Exodus Prime. Elias stepped forward as the image of Chancellor Verex appeared. The Dominion leader looked older than before. "We surrender," Verex said clearly. "No tricks, no hidden conditions, just surrender." Human officers around Elias remained silent. Elias studied Verex's face carefully. "Your military will stand down," Elias said. "All offensive weapons systems will be dismantled." "It will be done," Verex replied. "You will release control of occupied systems." Verex hesitated briefly, then nodded. "It will be done." Elias's expression did not change, and the Dominion will never again develop planetary destruction weapons. Verex lowered his head slightly. "It will be done." The transmission ended. Across the Dominion capital, defense cannons powered down, warships shut off weapons, military codes were transferred to human oversight system. The most powerful empire in the galaxy had surrendered without its capital being fired upon. But not everyone accepted it. Deep within the lower levels of the capital, a radical Dominion general named Korath refused to stand down. He believed surrender was weakness. He believed surrender was weakness. He believed extinction was better than humiliation. Without authorization, he activated a hidden planetary defense array and aimed it directly at Exodus Prime. On the human flagship, alarms suddenly flashed. Unauthorized weapon activation detected. Unauthorized weapon activation detected, an officer shouted. Energy levels spiked rapidly. Elias did not panic. Source: sub-level planetary array. Single strike capable of heavy damage. There was no time for negotiation. The weapon fired. A massive beam of energy shot toward Exodus Prime. But before it could reach the flagship, a human defense vessel shifted into its path. The beam struck. Space rippled violently. The human ship shattered under the impact. Thousands of human lives lost in an instant. Silence followed. On Dominion screens, the image of the destroyed human vessel floated in debris. Chancellor Verex's face turned pale. "That was not authorized," he said urgently. Elias stared at the wreckage. For 3,000 years, humanity had trained to control anger. Now it was being tested. An officer whispered, "Commander, your order?" All human fleets were locked and ready. One command could turn the Dominion capital into dust. Elias's jaw tightened. He closed his eyes briefly. 3,000 years ago, the Dominion chose destruction. What would humanity choose? He opened his eyes. Locate the source of the unauthorized attack. Identified. Rogue General. Disable the defense array only. Human ships moved instantly. Precise strikes targeted the hidden planetary cannon system. The weapon was destroyed within seconds. No further damage. No retaliation against the planet. Back in the capital chamber, Verex looked at the display in disbelief. You did not strike back. Elias's image appeared once more. We are not here for revenge, he said calmly. We are here for balance. Korath was arrested by his own guards. The last spark of resistance was gone. The Dominion had made its choice, and humanity had made theirs. But the war had changed something deeper. Not just borders, not just power. It had changed the meaning of strength in the galaxy. And the final chapter was still to come. The war was over, but the silence that followed felt heavier than battle. Dominion fleets were disarmed, military codes were transferred, occupied systems were released from control. Across thousands of worlds, news spread that the great Dominion Empire had surrendered, and yet human ships still remained in orbit, watching, not threatening, just present. In the Dominion capital, Chancellor Varex stood before a public broadcast system. Billions of citizens waited for answers. For 3,000 years, Varex began, we ruled through fear. We believed power gave us the right to shape the galaxy. He paused. We were wrong. The admission shocked many. Humanity had every reason to destroy us. We destroyed their home. We erased their world. Yet they chose restraint. The broadcast ended with something no Dominion leader had ever said before. We will rebuild differently. Far above the planet, Commander Elias Ward stood alone in the observation deck of Exodus Prime. Stars filled the darkness. Behind him, officers quietly coordinated post-war operations. Ships were moving into protective formations instead of battle lines. A soft voice interrupted his thoughts. Commander, reconstruction teams are ready. He nodded slowly. Begin Phase 2. 3,000 years ago, when Earth was burning, humanity had activated more than survival protocols. They had saved something else. Memory. Deep within the Exodus fleet's archives were preserved genetic libraries, ecological databases, climate models, cultural records, art, music, language. Earth was gone physically, but its blueprint remained perfect. Now, human terraforming ships moved toward the empty space where Earth once existed. The original planet had been shattered beyond recovery. Its remains drifted as a broken asteroid field. But humans had prepared for this. Using advanced gravitational engineering, they began gathering planetary fragments. Mass was collected, stabilized, compressed. Over months, a new planetary core was formed. Not rushed, not artificial, carefully designed. Across the galaxy, civilizations watched in silence as humans began rebuilding their lost world. They did not take a Dominion planet as replacement. They did not demand territory. They rebuilt their own. On the surface of the forming world, oceans were released from storage reservoirs. Atmospheric processors filled the sky with breathable air. Seed vaults were opened. Green began spreading across dark soil. Forests returned. Rivers flowed again. It was not the same Earth, but it carried the same spirit. In the Dominion capital, young students studied this event in real time. Teachers explained what had happened 3,000 years ago. For the first time, the truth was taught openly. Earth had been destroyed not because humans were evil, but because they were rising, and the Dominion had been afraid. Now fear had changed sides, but humans were not using it. Months passed. The new Earth was stable. Blue oceans shimmered under sunlight. Clouds drifted peacefully across the sky. The first human civilians prepared to land. Commander Elias stood in the central hall of Exodus Prime as officers gathered around him. It is complete, one of them said quietly. Elias looked at the live image of the new planet. 3,000 years of waiting, 3,000 years of preparation, 3,000 years of preparation, 3,000 years of pain. He spoke calmly. Opened broadcast to the entire galaxy. Moments later, every major communication network carried the same signal. The image of the new Earth filled billions of screens. Then Elias appeared. His voice was steady. 3,000 years ago, our home was burned. Images of the old Earth's destruction appeared briefly. We survived. Images shifted to human fleets traveling through darkness. We prepared. The reconstruction of Earth filled the screen. And now we return. He paused. We do not return for conquest. He looked directly into the camera. We return as guardians. Across the galaxy, species listened carefully. We have seen what fear can create. We have seen what power without restraint can destroy. He gestured toward the new Earth. This world stands as proof that destruction is not the end. His tone grew firmer. But hear this clearly. Silence filled countless rooms across the stars. If anyone burns our home again, he did not raise his voice. We will not wait 3,000 years next time. The message ended. It was not a threat shouted in anger. It was a promise spoken in calm certainty. Years later, the galaxy began to change. Without the Dominion's rule, independent systems formed new alliances. Trade expanded peacefully. Military development slowed across many regions. Human fleets did not withdraw completely. They patrolled quietly along major routes, not as conquerors, as balance keepers. If pirates attacked weaker systems, human ships appeared. If conflicts escalated toward planetary destruction, human diplomats intervened. The legend of humanity transformed. Once feared as unpredictable warriors, then remembered as extinct, now known as something different, unyielding, patient, prepared, and just. On the surface of the new Earth, children ran through fresh grass under open skies. They learned about the old Earth, not with hatred but with understanding. They were taught strength, but also restraint. Commander Elias, older now, stood on a cliff overlooking the ocean. Waves crashed against rocks. Wind moved through green trees. A young officer approached him. "Do you think the galaxy truly understands?" she asked. Elias watched the horizon. "They understand enough." He smiled slightly. "We showed them something greater than revenge." The officer looked at the peaceful world around them. "Hope?" Elias nodded. "Control." Far beyond Earth, in deep space, ancient stars burned quietly. The galaxy would face new dangers in the future. New empires would rise. New conflicts would begin. But one truth would remain carved into history forever. They burned Earth. Humanity returned. And this time, they were not just survivors. They were the guardians of the stars.